Welcome to my Sorare journey, episode 80, over 3 years of Sorare content, and today we've hit a little bit of a purple patch. Starting off with an 18th place finish in the first game week of the Euros, and what makes that even better is the fact that I wasn't trying to win this competition. Now obviously a lot of my gallery is Champion Europe focused, you know, I've had Declan Rice, Kieran Trippier, Unai Simon, Pellegrini for ages. I did go out and get Cody Gakpo, but he was the only real signing. And I only did that because I didn't really have a starting forward. So I thought, do you know what? Wasting all these decent potential scores, probably not worth it. And what happens? Paid off in the first week, £113 and a tier 1. And if you want to see the tier 1, here you go.
So we'll just get into it. The tier 1 rare, we're hoping for something big. Champion Europe be good. Swiss goalkeeper, Sommer? Oh, Kobel from Dortmund. I'm fairly happy with that. It'll be a bit price suppressed at the minute because he doesn't start for Switzerland, but what a fantastic keeper to get, especially for next season. Buzzing with that.
Gregor Kobel of Dortmund, Champions League finalist, £393, £343. That gives us about £500 of rewards in the first Euros game week. And then from there, it didn't get too much worse either. So we did have this mega score getting cooked. Cody Gakpo's been on absolute fire during the entire competition. Unai Simon rotated in the last game. Spain were already through with David Raya on the bench. It didn't really surprise me. That's why I spread my team. And then I thought, do you know what? If the teams do rotate like Germany, Pascal Gross will probably get some minutes. But no, he didn't. But that is just painful because you can just change them out. But ultimately, I was not disappointed at all because of what happened in the top team. A cap 240 team hits just over 350 points, getting us an extra £62, which is essentially a backup team. Like, I didn't really expect any of these to pop off. I think Danny Olmo, with the rotation, started the game, which again was linking to Unai, where it's like, if they go full strength, I'll be fine. If they rotate, I've got Captain Olmo. But yeah, people like Julio and Ciso just playing in the Copa America, able to put up some decent scores again after I paid a pretty penny for him. So happy with that. Roll into the next game week, it wasn't awful. This was a bit of a weird week because I essentially forgot to do my teams because you'll see there's no limited teams, there's no training teams, and it's just a combination of my decent rare players. So what happened is that I try and put my teams in early so that if I do forget, I'll still have a fallback option. So this is kind of what it was. Like, you know, Xavi Simons, I probably wouldn't have risked over Pellegrini, things like that. Unexpected to start against Switzerland, who I thought they'd do better. With hindsight, you obviously swap those out, you get a decent reward. But ultimately, I think we ended up with nothing that week. But still, all of the players are performing relatively decently, which leads us into the current game week where we've got a decent limited team cooking. Now, limited is just very historical cards for me that I don't really want to sell, or I would probably sell a lot of the Asian ones, but for the effort it takes, maybe I do a giveaway for them because I really don't care about them. It's just nice to chuck them in a lineup. But a tier 2 potentially here, and this game is just kicked off, so if we get a clean sheet and a goal from Marcinho, who knows, then we can probably push a bit higher, but limited I haven't really paid too much attention to. In the rare though, potentially cooking. Unai Simon put up a nice 57. If he didn't concede that last minute goal to Wirtz, that would have been like an 80 score, which would have been huge. We roll into the England game where it's really tough to know what Southgate's going to do. They looked absolutely awful throughout the competition, but the fact that you can make a couple changes, because that's what he's just not been doing. He's just not been making any decent changes. And then you can have a good team because of all the talent. So it wouldn't shock me if England were good. Wouldn't shock me if England were bad. And then we roll into the Netherlands, the Dutch team. Now, I said Xavi will be good. And all the Dutch fans told me on my second YouTube channel that, you know, it's just not true. He does nothing for the Dutch team. Depay's the guy. Incorrect. He has been so unlucky not to beat France with his goal. Then you look at the man to the right, who's been their star man, Cody Gakpo. Did not expect that. Going into next season, it's tough to know what to do with him. But there's also been some positive news just in my general gallery. So I don't do too much trading recently, but I've got a load of Hendrik van Kronbergs because of the fact Jannis Blaswich and the Van der Voort situation at Leipzig. If you don't know, it's actually Van der Voort has moved to Leipzig. It was pre-arranged, so you knew what was going to happen. And then likely Van Kronberg would probably step into the starting position. Now, it's difficult to trade on Sorare because you lock up your capital and the cards, as more come to the market, they go down in value. So towards the middle end of the season, like a little bit of everywhere, last 3 months, 6 months was it? Wow, I was picking them up. So probably could have waited till here if I was being like optimal, but it's getting to the stage now where people are realizing this guy's probably going to be starting. He's going to be starting for a good team, so we can start selling some of them. I think ultimately I'm filtering by Challenger Europe here because it's just not a division I care about. Yanis Blaswich, an unsurprising move. He went to Salzburg, but because they've already got a decent starting keeper in the form of Schlager here, I just don't know if he's going to be first choice. So I would have, the idea was that he'll move somewhere and be first choice because he's been so good as a backup keeper for Leipzig. But Salzburg, I know this guy's got an injury, but I don't know when till. And the market reacted in different ways. It's like he was 46, he went up to 104, then reality kicked in and people are like, it's probably not going to be a starting keeper, he's probably still a bench keeper. So somewhere between 62 and 80 pounds. Not the best result, but I think the fact that Van Kronberg, I can sell out of him would be nice, and then we roll in to Champion Europe, baby. Where we've just let one of our star cards go. Elise, who I absolutely love as a footballer. I think he's going right to the top of world football. Yes, a little bit injury prone, but just outstanding. Gets the perfect move, or link, it's not official yet, to Bayern Munich, and I've sold into long-term subscriber and follower of the channel, Gaza. Why? Well, I put out a little poll on Twitter because I was stuck on what to do, but I know I'm very biased because of how good I think he'll be. He was selling, a range of cards. I think £230 was essentially like the fair range, especially when I picked him up for 128. And then what really sold me was the fact that there's so much uncertainty with transfers. I always try and go on the side of, this is a really risky game as it is. No one knows what happens in football. It's unpredictable. So try and stay away from the even more unpredictable situations of moving clubs, even if it is a wonderful on-paper transfer. Because what other people do is look at that paper transfer and convert that to reality. So he's moved to Bayern Munich, 80s every week. The reality of the situation is he might not start, and even if he does start, Koeman and Sane didn't just rip every week. Like, there were times where they went on, bad patches of runs. And then alternatively, let's say he rips every week. Well, that would require Bayern to be scoring 3 or 4 goals every week. So anyone with a Bayern Munich team is going to absolutely annihilate me with my Leipzig stack and a Bayern Munich forward. So it doesn't really make sense. Like, as much as I like him, Bayern need to shift on a Koeman or a Sane, otherwise he will be rotational. Now, we don't know how Kompany's going to play. You would expect 60, 65 million, whatever he's going to go for. He's probably going to get a decent amount of minutes. But at the same time, I can double my value. I can bring in Ugarte, who's likely going to go to United. Now, he wasn't my first choice. I was looking through Gaz's gallery, looking for someone else. But at the end of the day, I really think this kid is talented. I didn't watch him towards the second half of the season. At the end of the day, he's a 40 million euro-ish player. He has got talent, so he can be decisive, or he can be useful for my club if I need him. In terms of his value, it's about 65 to 70 pounds. Which is fair. The problem is he's going to be a CDM, so if he is ripping, we're going to ignore the international fixtures. We'll just filter by PSG, and then I want him when he's starting, really. You see, it's very unlikely that he's going to hit these scores because he needs a decisive. Most of the time, it's going to be nice 66s, 75s, which, depending which competition you're playing, could be good, could be not good. If you're waiting for CDMs to get a decisive, it is always difficult, especially with captaincy, unless they're on set pieces and stuff. So overall, I think it's one of those deals that just suits everyone. Gaza's happy to take the risk and hope that he goes for, like, absolutely ballistic at Bayern Munich, whereas I'm happy to take the cash and take a little bit of money out of Sorare. And that's exactly what I did with my cash winnings and my sale of Elise. I thought £300, we'll just take that out. There's a weird situation where I'm not as engaged with Sorare as I have been for the last 3 years. I suppose that's pretty normal if you've played it for 3 years. Also, it's just a big time consumption. I almost missed my lineups completely last week and things like that, where it's like, okay, well, if you're not going to play optimally and you've still got 5-6 grand in this account, maybe it's just time to sell off some cards, especially when you don't need another centre mid. Like, look at my Premier League midfielders, right? I've got Rice, I've got Gomares, I've got Kudus, I've got Pascal Gross. I really didn't need Elise at that point. Now, of course, there's areas you can strengthen, but there's always areas you can strengthen. And then alternatively, new season is so fun to play. I so much more prefer playing the in-season variation. So I'm stuck now on like that. Like if the game gets a lot funner, I've got that ability to go back in, and if it stays as it is and I'm partially interested in it, like I just like setting my teams and watching them, then I can still do that. But ultimately, I'm sitting with about 1.1 ETH ready to go if I need to, or if I get that vibe, if I'm like, right, so it's going to go to the next level, or it's going to knock it up. Don't get me wrong, I think everything they've been doing has been fantastic. Love the Euros, the Rivals, like 20-person gameplay. That could be huge rolling to the Premier League. I know Nicholas has like tweeted about it, like a teaser. I can't see it being anything else. In terms of stability, it's looking quite solid as a platform. Let's check how many users they've gained. If you watched my last episode, you would have seen I have this graphic of the change in users being onboarded to Sorare, and you can see right when it was new, Playpool flying in, the Gary V boom, and this is what caused prices to go absolutely ballistic. And in the same way, when there's a huge fall in the number of users joining, it of course has the vice versa effect where card prices fall drastically. And we get into the position where this horrendous 2023 and rolled into 2024, it might be coming to an end where you start to get a more stable market. When you get a more stable market, prices aren't falling, so people aren't leaving, people more likely to join. But it all comes down to June, which is now finished. So let's get the number. And it's a huge one because they did a big Euro 2024 push. So let's see. You can get my live reaction to the number. So 2,000, you would expect it to beat 2,000 by like a 4,000. I think anything over 5,000 would be decent. I think it's statistics managers, but I always get it wrong. And then I filter by month, and then we go to June, 3,500. Now, let's just fill that in. Is it 3,551? I think it was 3,551. Yeah. Yeah, I would have expected 4,000, so it's close. In terms of change year on year, we're up 66%, so it looks fantastic compared to obviously here. But why would you be joining a game when there's no champion football on? You know, there's no Premier League, there's no Bundesliga, there was no international competition last year. If you compare it to the year before, 8,000, that was Cryptomania, NFT Mania season. It's decent, it's not great. It really comes down to July. It's just, we'll see what happens without a big Euro push. I mean, there'll probably be a Premier League push. But what you've got to consider that always during these times is that it costs a lot of money to, you know, sponsor, let's say, these fantasy football Twitter personalities and YouTube personalities that they've got in to promote the game. That can't, just because you don't see the cost doesn't mean it's not a cost to the business. So hopefully these 3,500 users stick around. Obviously this isn't the full picture. This doesn't show who's leaving. This doesn't show how much money current users are putting into the platform. Say if all the old people get a lot more confidence, put more money in, wouldn't be shown here. It would be shown in card prices. But it's tough to see in card prices because they're naturally meant to fall anyway. In terms of next season then, this is how it's currently looking in the Premier League. I think we've got so much depth. We could add a little bit more quality. Don't know what's happening with Salah. That'll be a big one to the gallery. Ultimately, it's good besides that. I've got heavy into Liverpool, which I don't like with a new manager coming in. I'd much rather be a bit more consistent with, you know, maybe an Arsenal that are keeping Arteta, or you know, someone that has that unknown risk scares me. And that's the same for Brighton, but obviously they had such a bad season where it's like, you expect them to do a bit better. If you scroll down, you can go into my Bundesliga teams and you can see I've been scouting for potential replacements for a forward, because if you get Openda injured, you don't want to not be able to run out all of these guys. Xavi, we still don't know where he's going to go. He's been linked with Bayern. He's going back to PSG. I think he'll end up at PSG because of the Mbappe sale, how good he's been, or how good he just is. I think they'll go back and say, right, we need this kid. He's a wonder kid. We'll pay you what you want. You're guaranteed to start. What I like about Xavi, for both a Sorare perspective and a football perspective, he wants to play football. The first thing I think he says to PSG is, am I a starter? Am I going to start every week? If that's a no, I'm not going to stay. And that's where these other clubs come in and say, right, we'll give you starting position, and then he's more likely to get the deal. Danny Olmo, I think he's going to make a big transfer. So many things to be seen, but ultimately, I think we're well covered. This is the Euro depth we had. Pretty much nailed we didn't go for Sesko, just too expensive. I mean, this is my rant of the video. I always like chucking a little rant to be, you know, as honest as possible. Why are people paying so much for this guy? Average of 46. Oh, thank God, 195. Someone saw one for 156, which is a bit more fair, but probably still a bit expensive. Keep in mind, Elise at Bayern would be £230. So Yeah, so many things to consider here. I think ultimately we have a really steady gallery. Undav and Coman, probably get rid of Coman now if you get the Elise risk. So we're looking for a forward in the Bundesliga. None of the champ old cards are gonna be sold. I quite like all of them. I think I got rid of Ramos actually, so that's a lie. But yeah, ultimately that's how it's looking. I'm excited for next season. The return of Matoma. I always try and pick out undervalued cards during the transfer window, and it's got to be Matoma for me at the minute. He was injured, but yeah, if you can pick him up in rare for what's that, £45, really top player, could make a bigger transfer to Brighton in the coming years, and he'll put up solid scores this year if he stays injury free under a decent new manager. Yeah, a little bit risky for £45. I think that's very fair. Always I like to compare to the limited price, see how close they are. Right, if people are buying it for £15, £45 for a rare is good value. So that's been everything for me. Thank you of any of you that have supported, watched, liked anything during the past 3 years. Thank you so much. All the best, G. Cheers.